Okay, so we're in a
again.
podcast. We're in a real podcast.
Yeah,
How
we
did
are.
how did we get into this
How do we
podcast?
get into this podcast?
How do we get out of this podcast? Do we
All
exist
right.
outside the podcast?
Welcome to Smolder, the Professionals Applied AI podcast. I'm your host, James Wagenheim. Today's guest, art director and filmmaker Ian Pullens, who also happens to be my brother-in-law. But it's not nepotism that drove me to invite Ian today. It's the fact that he is a hugely inspiring creative with a keen eye for quality and a sharp mind for process. Ian has produced some of the coolest and most thoughtful films and creative pieces for companies and deploys a wide range of skills to bring his vision to life and empower brands to deliver their message. He really knows his industry, and I enjoyed hearing his thoughts on the state of AI in creative fields and learning what he thinks the future holds. If you like this conversation, please hit the like button, subscribe, or find us on Patreon. Without further ado, here is Ian Pullens. Ian Pullens, welcome to the Smolder podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Well, I know I'm going to mention this in the intro, but I'm going to say it again, that you're my brother-in-law, and I have always loved talking to you about technology and about businesses and innovation. You're one of the most inspiring people that I know to ideate with. And so this is a perfect format for us to have a conversation. So I'm really excited. I guess the first question I have for you.
Wait, I don't get to respond to your high praise first?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the feeling is mutual, Mr. Brother-in-law. We've known each other for 20 years. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
But 20 years. So I think it's fair to say we've established a relationship that is beyond just in-law status.
Yeah.
The feeling is mutual. I think we've always kind of connected on sharing of ideas and I mean, at least from my perspective, I felt like we've always gotten along pretty well. So
Definitely.
The pleasure is certainly all mine. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. What I'd love to bring out today is to just understand what are the really inspiring things and what are some of the scary things that the latest iteration of artificial intelligence and the new creative tools that are coming online, and how those things strike you today.
When you work as a creative professional, like many jobs, it's all about solving problems. And the problems that we solve are creative. And so the tools that are coming out, like any technology, it solves a problem. And the idea is that it solves it faster and cheaper and more efficiently. And so what's exciting about it is if you're keeping up and you're paying attention, you can leverage those tools to level up your skill set, and you can expand, and you can combine those tools with your own experience and expertise, and then scale in ways that you couldn't before. Yeah. And hopefully that's kind of like what all technology should be doing. There's certainly people who get stuck in their antiquated ways and they're like, no, I know how to use a fax machine and only a fax machine, and I will not deviate. But if you're open to learning new things, this new AI round is just cracking open a lot of dichotomies that have been stuck for a really long time. So I find it, super exciting. I mean, we can get into the nuanced areas. Like I see it every day with my job in design and, corporate branding and art direction, where we are spinning up design assets and creative solutions much, much faster than we were before. Mm-hmm. And there are inherent fears that those will eliminate jobs. And to some extent, the sad truth is it will eliminate some jobs, but it's also creating other jobs. Mm-hmm. There's a line going around that I really like, that I've adopted, in that AI is not going to replace your job. Someone who knows how to use AI is going to replace your job, or take your job. And so, it's interesting because, we were talking a little bit before, like I have this philosophy where I don't believe people have changed. I believe that human beings are largely the same as they have been for thousands of years. And the technology we develop, allows us to communicate faster and build more. But ultimately, our character, our personalities, our desire for human connection and catharsis are eternal, in my opinion. And history repeats itself. So we're old enough to have remembered the dot-com boom.
Yeah.
And that was like the new frontier and super exciting. And look at what we can do, and look how accessible things are with the internet. And this kid can learn to program in his basement, and he can start a Google or something like this, or a Netflix. And I think that we're just, every couple decades we see these like leaps, and they stack and they stack and they stack. And so they're equal parts exciting and terrifying, because they're going to shatter the dichotomies of the past, but they're also going to create, brand new things. And it's interesting because it's like, I was just talking to somebody the other day about Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite movies. I think it's everybody our age, one of their favorite movies. And in Back to the Future 2, they have so many predictions of the future that they got wrong.
Yeah.
Like, we're all disappointed that we don't have flying cars. And I don't know why we haven't done that yet. But one of the other things they got wrong was they predicted that every home would have a fax machine. And Marty gets fired by a fax machine. His boss yells at him to read his fax as it gets printed out right in front of him. The irony there is they're having a video call like you and I are having. Like, he's in his living room watching his boss on a giant screen, and they're having essentially a FaceTime call in his living room. So that was spot
read your
on.
fax. Yeah.
Yeah. And then all the fax machines in the house print out these faxes. And so it's
You're fired.
That's right.
Well, I think about that all the time, like how hilarious some of our projections into the future are, which is like, even just the interface. Like, we couldn't come up with anything better than like the blocky keyboards that they would have. Like, you'd see those in all kinds of movies from the 80s, like looking 100 years in the future or whatever. You're like jamming on these like big blocky keyboards and looking into these tube monitors, and you're like, that's not, you guys probably could have done a little better than that.
Okay, this will blow your mind, right? So you watch like Alien or Space Odyssey, 2001: A Space Odyssey. It's exactly that, right? It's supposed to be the future, and everything's a tube monitor and those chunky keys.
Yeah.
And I grew up, I wanted to get away from a desktop computer as fast as possible, and I wanted a laptop. Laptops were the future. It's like I was ready to settle for like a cheap word processor just to feel like I had a laptop computer. And even today, like the keyboard that I have in front of my computer is this Apple, like very low profile keys. Right? I love this keyboard. I love the keys. I love the way it feels. And yet, and I'm using a 30-inch display that's flat, right? So the screen prediction was way wrong, right? I can't. And I used to do design on a 14-inch tube monitor. It was awful. However, I have 3 sons, all of them teens, and one of them's an adult, and they all prefer the chunky giant keys for gaming.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, what? And they're like, and Maximus, my middle son, he's like, Dad, I want to show you something. And he goes over one of the keys and he starts tapping on it. And he's like, you hear that? Sounds like butter. And I'm like, what? What are you talking? He's like, that's so smooth. And I'm like, I hear keys. It sounds like you're using a typewriter, like a Neanderthal. Like, so it's so weird. Like, we went forward and developed this keyboard that I use, and then the younger generation said, "Nah, like I prefer." They
want a little more chunk.
They want the chunk, like a little chunk of their keyboard.
Yep.
I don't know what that says about humanity, but what's interesting is, like, when I was learning design, I was being self-taught. In the early 90s, like dabbling on hacker sites, redesigning website logos and websites for people, just figuring out what desktop publishing was. And then at the same time, in my high school, it was a government funded, it was a military school on an army base. We had a communication arts program with printing presses and dark rooms. And I was learning how to develop photography, black and white photography. And we were learning how to make prints on an actual Heidelberg printing press.
Cool.
And we were doing basic layouts on these OS 9 Macintosh computers. And the way that we had to make the layout was we were only allowed to typeset on the computer. We were not allowed to do any layout design on the computer, only text. And then we had to print it out, and then we would take it over to these light tables, and we had to cut and paste physically the copy that we had typeset where we wanted on the layout. And then we would go to our clip art books, which were binders, and it was a whole shelf of binders, and we would find clip art that we liked. We would take it over to a copy machine, photocopy it. If it was too big, we would scale it down on the copy machine. If it was too small, scale it up to be whatever proportions we wanted. We could change some of the contrast. That would print out a copy. Then we would take it over to the light table. We'd cut it out and paste it into the layout. And we would build these like flyers that had, it looked like a ransom note and of just cut and pasted stuff.
Almost letterpress like.
Right. It was like one generation after like letterpress stuff, right? And then what we're doing, because this was an offset printer. So what we do is once you have that plate, you take it over to there's like a plate photography machine, and it takes a giant photograph of that and creates a negative on a piece of film the size of like 11/17 piece of paper. And then that's your negative, but this film has a water offset feature where you roll it into the printing press and you get it wet, and anything the water like is the way that the film exposed like would repel water. And so you have one roller with ink and one roller with the negative that you had just printed. And as long as you keep this wet, the dry points would come in contact with the roller, and then it would have ink on one side that'd be a positive, and then it would roll in with paper and print one color. Wow. And you could do one color prints that way. At a time. And I'm really, really grateful for that experience, because to this day, because that was like 25 years ago, to this day, I can't click on the copy button or the paste button on either desktop publishing or design software and not think of that cut and paste experience and the literal cut and paste experience. Or we were talking before about clip art in software and like what the access.
The early days of Paint Shop Pro.
Right. So the cheap knockoff alternative to Photoshop, you had clip art, and it's like, ooh, I'm a designer because I just pasted this image in there. But where I'm getting at with humans haven't changed is that behavior was there before computers, right? Yeah. Clip art books existed before computers.
Where all the terminology originated.
Right. Like, so there were going to be print houses where they had books and books of, even if you want to go back 100 years, there were going to be guys that had like steel or whatever material, probably brass.
I love that you were in Germany, because that's where the Gutenberg press was originated.
Yep, the Gutenberg press. And the press that we had, we lived in Heidelberg, and the press we had was a Heidelberg press. Heidelberg is like a very famous printing press company today. Like most newspapers and like high-end printing is still done on Heidelberg printing presses. So there's a lot of printing heritage in Germany, but in Heidelberg as well. So I was very grateful for that experience. But I think about that all the time. I was like, I imagine that even before the printing press, you probably had people holding up stencils or things to windows and just tracing it out, right? They're like, because you had illustrators and you had artists who started from scratch, and then you had people who are like, I bet you I could use technology to speed this up, right? Because there's a big distinction between I'm creating art and then there's like what you could call like commercial art or communications art, where it's like it's artistic, it's creative, but it's a means to an end. We're selling something, we're communicating something, we're branding something. And so in that case, whereas an artist may need to take their time, and probably should, if they're just communicating their feelings or experiences and trying to achieve some level of catharsis personally, If you're trying to communicate an idea to someone else for the masses, for commercial consumption, you're trying to make a website, you're trying to make a brand, you don't have time to mess around with like, how do these shapes feel with me? Like, what is my vibe today? Like, you're like, no, we got to get on with it, right? And so AI is, in terms of generative AI, as it relates to the arts and communication arts, it's just the latest tool. Like, we could reference the 90s and early desktop publishing, but AI is just the latest version of the binder or the stack of brass plates that a 100-year-old printer would have just taken off and say, let's use this. But maybe we find a new configuration. Maybe we do something that nobody's ever done before, because now we don't have to build it from scratch, and we can communicate faster, and then we can learn and iterate faster. So,
well,
I don't know. It's a bit of a tangent. I don't know if I answered the question.
There's so much in there that I think is really interesting, and it's funny that you mentioned the printing press or the press. That technology, I think, was sort of responsible for sort of kicking off the Protestant Reformation, or it had a large impact on kicking off the Protestant Reformation.
Sure.
One of the first things that happened was Gutenberg printed a Bible in German, I believe it was, or maybe it was Latin. I can't remember, but it was suddenly accessible to the masses. And so it inspired a lot of new ideas, and it democratized information in a way that had not been done before at that scale. And I think sort of similarly, these iterations with, everything from desktop publishing to the internet, now generative AI, has a sort of like further, to your point, we're repeating that same loop of releasing more and more tools for people to be able to communicate in new ways, to develop marketing materials without, really professional support. They're giving it's helping people have more capacity.
Yeah. And look, something that I want to say to people who are afraid of AI is people were afraid of books when they came out.
Yeah.
Every time there's a dichotomy shifting technology, it freaks people out, because now when the printing press came out, we have a technology that doesn't just have the capacity for printing information and sharing it with the masses and educating people, but you have also invented a technology that has the capacity to misinform people.
Sure.
Because now ideas that are dangerous can be spread, right? And we see this throughout history as well. It's like, what is the first thing that forces, whether they be fascist or otherwise, want to control? But it's the streams of information. It's, let's get rid of the books. Let's get rid of the comedians. Let's get rid of the ideas that are scary. And so every time we crack open the internet was another one. The app revolution was another one. It's like every time we crack this open, the technology can be used for good or for bad. And no one alive today is going to say, oh, we really messed up when we invented the printing press.
Yeah.
It's like, well, it's not the technology that was the problem. It's that we have to get used to regulating how humans behave in terms of
what's acceptable and what's not.
Right.
It as soon as the printing press was created, it was immediately used to print all kinds of false pamphlets and made up stuff. So, and before that, people were doing graffiti on Roman buildings, and so I totally resonate with what you're saying, that sort of like these patterns, for better or for worse, just repeat themselves, because they're just sort of reflective of human nature, and obviously they give us more capacity to do that at scale, but it doesn't change the fundamentals that drive us to do those things.
And there are, I don't want to pretend like there isn't scary stuff. Like, I'm not like an AI apologist. Like, there are things that are scary. I mean, if I don't stay on top of it, my expertise and profession could be at risk, whether it's, the films that I want to make or the commercial clients that I work for, like all of that stuff. If you don't stay on your toes, they may quickly decide that they don't need me because they can do it in Canva, or, they can have any number of AI tools generate something. And we have to be mindful, but I would cautious anybody not to live in fear. I would also cautious those same people maybe to turn off the news, because the news wants you to be afraid, So, and there's a big difference between media and spin and news and being educated, right? Because there's like nothing greater than being educated. So if you're afraid of something, you need to get yourself educated right away. So like, people who are panicking, like I know people who are like very much afraid of like what AI is going to do to the world, and I'm like it's never, what is the saying? Nothing is ever as good or as bad as it seems.
One, there really is a lot of signs that are happening in the public sector right now, that basically there's this pendulum swing where it's swinging back towards executives are no longer pushing AI down everyone's throat. They're looking for, where does it actually show a return on the investment? Google and OpenAI and Microsoft, the big, powerful AI model generators, are going after huge investments. A lot of the normal everyday corporations that are just trying to use this stuff are now dialing it back a little bit more. Deloitte was saying that around 15% of organizations are using generative AI and getting significant measurable ROI. And so that's a much smaller percentage than I think a lot of people expected. And then most people are getting around maybe 2 to 5 hours of efficiency in a 40-hour work week, which is not very much. Then they're expecting like 30% efficiency. So, it's certainly not enough to replace employees and things like that. Now, there's an expectation that percentage is going to grow, but it certainly doesn't line up with the hype that everyone had put out there. And it certainly doesn't, whether it be positive or negative. It's not like tearing people's jobs away yet at its scale. And it's certainly not as good as executives have hoped it was going to be. The other thing I would say is that I'm really shocked that it's true that a lot of people struggle with technology, but it's also remarkable at adoption. My grandmother, for example, doesn't really like talking on the phone. She wants to just text. So, Patsy, she just wants to text. She doesn't want a phone call. So, that's pretty remarkable, and they're using iPhones just like any teenager might. They have their own apps and they've got their own settings. And so it's remarkable how comfortable people are with technology across the board. And I think we'll see the same thing with AI as it starts to bleed into just sort of everyday life.
Yeah. I keep wanting to come back to this idea that the more things change, the more they stay the same.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And something I have been saying to my clients for 20 years, no matter what technology comes out, they'll say, I need you to do this thing for me. How much will it cost? And my answer is always, it depends. There isn't like, what do you want it to do?
Right.
So we have to be thinking constantly, and AI is the new technology that as creators we're navigating around, because every creator that I know kind of collectively rolls their eyes when a client or a boss says, oh, just use AI. And it's just like, you don't know what you're talking about, right? Like, because there are some jobs that I can do where I can use AI and it will make my job easier, but it won't necessarily be good.
Right.
Like I literally had a client say, can you send me the style guide for our brand? I want to try something. And,
oh, yeah.
And okay, so some people I know get offended at that.
Yeah.
They'll be like, how dare you?
Yeah.
But I've been a scrappy designer my whole life,
right.
and I've been ripped off creatively. And any creator who works consistently, this is not, I'm not commenting on necessarily on AI ripping off designers, although we can talk about that. But like I've designed logos or I've come up with ideas or stories, and I've literally just been ripped off, or someone will yank it and claim it as their own. Mm-hmm. And I was blessed early on that I came to the realization that I will never get angry that someone ripped me off because they can't make it.
Yeah.
I can make it again. I can make something else better. Yeah. I should be already on to the next thing. So that's my perspective when somebody who doesn't have a background in design or creative stuff says, oh, give me the style guide. Let me try to make something. And then they make a flyer. It looks awful. Like it looks like someone designed it well, but the fonts are all wrong.
Right.
The human being that's in it doesn't look entirely real. And while AI will get better and eventually that might be more impressive, where that doesn't bother me is that executive that did that doesn't know what good looks like. And AI is not going to give him the instinct, experience, or inherent talent to know what good looks like.
Right.
And whether you're using AI or you're drawing it by hand or you're using Photoshop or an amalgam of all of those things, we're still going to need experts with taste and experience. And ideally, sometimes you get those in the same person. Sometimes you need it in teams. But ideally, someone who is empathetic, who can intuit what the client or brand needs, intuit the solution to the problem, as opposed to just like, here is style guide, go ahead, make thing that you think you need.
Yeah.
We need to be more thoughtful than that. And AI is not going to solve for the output. Like AI is going to keep trying and trying and trying, and people are going to keep prompting it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we have to have veto power. We have to have the veto power to say, this is good. Or like when in terms of filmmaking, I always describe a director's job, because it's such a collaborative art form, is your job is to be able to say this, not that.
Yeah.
This, not that. This, not that. Which is a combination of craft and taste. And I think you can teach craft. I think it's hard to teach taste.
Right.
So
there's certainly like a lower bar communication style or communications need that AI is probably a great fit for, and similarly Paint Shop Pro in the 90s for anybody who wanted to smack together a yard sale sign or a cheap advertisement to put in a newspaper or even in a video commercial or whatever. But in terms of actually producing quality work that accommodates for the fact that you want to deliver something really unique and very focused on a specific message, I don't see how you get around without involving a creative that actually has good taste.
Yeah, I agree. But I can't be so arrogant to say only hire creatives, right? Because I think...
Yeah, no, I agree.
I saw a statistic that was talking about like, oh, AI is going to eliminate jobs for actors and Hollywood's in trouble. And then part of that statistic was, 95% of actors are unemployed. And it's such a difficult profession to be in. But I've hired actors, and 95% of the actors, and this is going to sound mean, but 95% of the actors that I have hired are not good.
Yeah.
And I find that's not exclusive. That's not exclusive to acting. That's true in most creative fields, and it may be true beyond creative fields. I went to an arts college, and they would just let everybody in there. They didn't really audit very hard what your capacity was, what your portfolio was, because it was a private school, and it was kind of like a money grab, which I didn't know at the time, obviously. But the sad thing is nobody was going to say, this really isn't your thing, and you could probably make $100,000 a year being a plumber.
Yeah. Because
the average, and they're not telling you that the average pay for a graphic designer is $60,000.
Yeah.
Like my youngest son, Atticus, who has interest in graphic design, he comes to me the other day and he says, Dad, did you know the average graphic designer makes $60,000 a year? And I said, that's why I'm an art director. Yes, I do know that. Diversification, my boy. Diversify your skill set. Don't be so limited. But what I'm getting at is, you were talking about, somebody needs a yard sign, right? So I'm doing a garage sale, or I have a startup bakery and I can't afford an agency or design shop, so I might hire a cheap designer, or I might do it with AI. Now, is it sad that the cheap designer who isn't very good won't get that job because somebody's doing it with the AI? Yes. But if that designer has talent and fortitude and is crafty, they'll figure out how to use AI and scale their business, and they'll learn very quickly, oh, maybe I'm not a graphic designer. Maybe I'm an art director, and I can say this, not that, and I can wield these tools, and I can exhibit expertise. There are some jobs that are just gonna go away.
Yeah.
And that's nature. That's just normal. We shouldn't try to say that 95% of the actors who are unemployed should have jobs. It's going to cause certain creative professions to be audited, and they would be better off doing something else.
Well, so that's interesting. What if there isn't something else?
I mean, I think AI. Okay, AI is going to solve a lot of problems. AI is going to help us solve, health problems and formulations for new drugs. It's going to help us, calculate budgets and stimulate the economy. It's going to help us with robotics. There's like so many things that the economy is going to grow exponentially as a result of AI. And we live in a weird society right now where people think, or they were told that because you're passionate about something, that should be your job. And there are a lot of people who, especially in creative fields, who weren't held to a standard. And then now somebody who doesn't know what they're doing can create something at a higher standard than they can, and they were never audited before. But it's okay. Like, some people build model trains, some people collect dolls, and they should not make those things businesses, right? Like, if you have a passion for photography or graphic design, great, good for you. But does that mean that you deserve a job in that? Not necessarily. Like, I think that there are some fields where you need to be an expert, and and that means that some industries may shrink, but that doesn't mean, like, I'm not saying if you at your core feel like you're a graphic designer, be a graphic designer, but also feed your family.
I do think that if you want production quality, grinding through, still paying attention to every moment in a video, or maybe you're editing a photo, really paying attention and doing the work, which, most people in the middle of that bell curve are doing. You still need them, even if maybe their job's made a little bit more efficient right now. And I'm not sure we'll see improvements, but the question will be, like, how long is that trajectory till we get to something that's like, we're really just talking about the top 10% working in those fields. I think I'm curious when that's going to be. I don't know, but I think it's further off than the open AIs and the Google people would probably have us believe.
There's a lot of unknown. And I always, whenever I hit, actually, let me back up real quick, because I want to clarify something. Because like being a creative professional, I also recognize that I'm very fortunate to have a job, and I also employ people, and I feel very fortunate that I can employ people, and I really enjoy. I have two types of people that I employ. There are people who are incredibly talented, who are rarely available to me, and I'm grateful when they're available, and I'm grateful that they're still working. Yeah. I also have people who work for me who are not the most talented, but they're a great hang, and they're great people, and they're really great in a work environment. And I'm so grateful that they're still learning, and their work is good enough to keep them employed, that it's not a zero-sum game where, like, it's good, it's not good, right? Like, I don't want to just delete someone because they're not hitting the mark.
Right.
But I do think that as creative professionals, we have a responsibility not to just rest on what we already know or rest in our comfort zone. I don't think that anybody has ever done anything great being comfortable. I think that, like, all great work comes out of a little bit of effort, a little bit or a lot of effort, and a lot of discomfort oftentimes. And that's when you kind of like break out of, what's possible. And for some people, the inspiration's going to come from AI. For some people, it's like, oh, I used to be really good at this thing, but I wasn't good at this other thing, and AI has solved that one part for me.
Yeah.
So like a good example for that is like rotoscoping. Rotoscoping in Hollywood and in regular commercial video production is the art of cutting people out and regenerating the background. Mm-hmm. And there are hundreds and hundreds of people who go frame by frame. They used to do it manually with film, and now they do it digitally, where they go frame by frame by frame, creating a high resolution alpha matte around somebody. Mm-hmm. It's very expensive. It's very tedious, and it's very laborious. And the thing
sounds
is,
awful.
It is awful. Like, this is not a job that anybody enjoys doing. Like, you could probably get a lot of podcasts and audiobooks in while you're doing it, because it really is mindless work.
Yeah.
It does employ people. It mostly gets outsourced overseas, so it's not paying a lot. But you literally have like sweatshops of rotoscopers in some lower income countries, which is wild. And so another debate could be had whether or not like we are contributing to their livelihood or just taking advantage of them. Mm-hmm. But that is one of the major places that AI is being is disruptive. Makes sense. Where I used to take me days to rotoscope something or cut out with a picture or video, and I can do it in AI like that.
Right.
And it's pretty good. Like, sometimes you have to clean it up, but depending on the tool you use, and if you have enough taste and judgment to be critical of it, if you're operating a high resolution environment, like, it can save you hundreds and hundreds of hours.
Yeah.
And now an editor that could say, oh, I'm really good at a handful of things, but I really suck at rotoscoping, can now add this AI tool to their tool set, and they can do stuff really, really fast.
Yeah.
They have to be able to articulate that difference and know the difference. And I think that's a really important distinction with every AI tool is you've got to know what it's doing for you. You can't just be like somebody who's like, I heard I can do this with AI. And it's like, how is this making a difference? Do you know the difference between even if you've never done it before, do you know the time that it's saving you? Do you know the amount of effort that it's saving you? Because if you know it, you can articulate it, and then you can explain that to your clients, to your bosses. You now have a value proposition where it's like, my expertise, my talent, my taste combined with this tool that's saving hundreds of hours is the balanced approach, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that with all technology, that should be where we're going. It shouldn't be full surrender to AI or the tools. Let's fire our editors. Let's fire our designers. It should be, let's find the amalgamated, balanced approach. Yeah. And have a vision and then get there in balance.
I think one thing that seems to be true right now, it's going to be really hard to tell what that looks like in 5-10 years, but you still need someone to drive and bring, get it to the last mile. And that's true in software especially, and I'm sure it's probably true in editing, which is like you can use an automated tool and it can get, pretty good, but you still need to give it good direction. And you need to have that moment of taste where you're saying, yeah, no, this, not that. And I really think that's where more and more of the economic value is going to be for people, is that taste spot. And specifically, like, yeah, they can do the rotoscoping, but someone's got to be there to say, you know what, actually did a bad job, and I need to correct these five things. So maybe they could do more work, but and it's more efficient. But there still needs to be someone there to observe.
100%. I mean, I believe we need humans to have vision.
Yeah.
We need humans to have an idea of where we're going, right? Like, I think AI is great for solving problems and making us efficient, but this is not a new problem, right? Like, we've all worked places where hundreds of people were employed, and one person's job was to cut out the widget, and another person's job was to count the beans, and like another person's job was to like get the coffee. But like but the problem wasn't any of those jobs. The problem was the person driving the bus, the captain of the ship, didn't have a vision or didn't have a direction we were going. And so everyone was a little frustrated with like, what are we doing? Where are we going? And that is a universal problem that has always existed. And AI isn't going to solve the problem of like the this, not that component of it. It's like what is good? What does success look like? How do you define success? You know, like before a couple years ago, before everybody was talking about AI, the two technologies that everybody was talking about right before they were talking about AI was data and cloud. Right. And now like it seems like data and cloud have just been replaced by AI. That's the technology we're talking about now. But before that, it was like, oh, you need data. You don't have enough data. Data is how your business succeeds. You know, we're doing it with data, and we're putting our data in the cloud. And it's like if you went back on like the Wayback Machine and looked at websites, like every technology company was talking about how they did it with data and the cloud. And now there's no mention of any data or cloud. It's just AI is the new data cloud. But as a creative and as a creator, we always found it very frustrating how much people valued the data. And I do believe the data is valuable, but the data can only tell you what you've already done. Right. The data, and it can show trend, but it will not say what you haven't done that will work. It will not innovate. It will not create. You can reference data as to make an educated guess. You know, like data will tell you that the stock is up or the stock is down, but it's not going to tell you if it's gonna keep going up or keep going down. It's a total gamble, right? You know, and so human beings still have to have judgment, and judgment is going to come from experience. You know, so that is what we need to use, you know, in discerning with AI. So like someone will say, just use AI is like telling a designer, just use Photoshop. And it's like, yeah.
Of course I'm going to use
Photoshop.
Yeah. It's just the technology. Right. Question, are there some tooling changes that you've made to incorporate AI? You know, where is it useful? Where is it not useful? What have you experimented with? And it doesn't have to be in your field. It could be out of your field. Just curious what you've played around with and what you're excited about.
Well, starting with my field, I'm using AI almost every day now in design, photo manipulation, and video manipulation. And I feel like this is really where AI soars, because I think right now it'll be interesting because it's getting better and better with what we call the uncanny valley. In the old days, people would make like CG illustrations, like, you know, 3D designs. Like if you remember like Robert Zemeckis's like Polar Express or Beowulf or any zombie movie from the past 20 years that use CG characters, you're like, it's not entirely believable, right? And some of the AI generative stuff lately is getting better, but just like how when we went from standard definition television to HD and we're like, we cannot imagine more resolution. And then you go from 4K, you go from HD to 4K. You're like, I can't believe I thought HD was good.
And now we're going to 8K.
I put in 8K, right? And you know, I put in a DVD the other day, and I watched it on my 60-inch television, and it was a standard definition DVD of Pirates of the Caribbean because I didn't own it in HD.
It's unwatchable.
It's unwatchable. It's unwatchable. And here's the point. I'll make
look back at a couple of the last podcasts. The video is pretty bad.
well, yeah. We all have high levels of grace for Zoom and podcasts, right? But if you're watching a Hollywood movie, you're like, how did we ever watch movies in standard definition? Okay. Right. But when you were watching it new in the late 90s on a 20-inch tube television, we're like, this is the greatest picture ever. Like it couldn't get better. But what happened? Humans are incredibly adaptable, and we get used to a thing, and then the new thing comes out, and we're like, oh, by contrast, we are now intuiting the difference and noticing the difference that we couldn't fathom before. Yeah. There was a time, it's hard to imagine this now. There was a time where there were colors that were unfamiliar to other human beings.
Yeah.
Because before television and photography, 200 years ago, every color you ever saw was a pigment created from nature. And if you didn't have access to a specific indigo flower or a specific orange, thing in the Amazon, there were hues that humans had never seen. And then when they saw them for the first time, it was like, I didn't know I was missing this.
Yeah. Well, I'm colorblind, so I've never had that experience.
But you might get that experience. Someday. Yeah, maybe AI will solve this for you. But okay, so to answer your question, we are editing photos that are real photos that we took, but using like Nano Banana and some of the Google stuff, and to some extent ChatGPT, and to some extent the native Firefly AI in Photoshop, and we use them all kind of in concert depending on what the need is, right?
Yep.
I can take a photo that I have taken of a real actor in a real commercial photography scenario, and I'm like, ooh, I literally did this the other day. I had an actor playing a guitar for a commercial, and he kind of looked like Jack Black. He had sunglasses on, and he was singing in a music store, and it was a great photo. But the problem was, the photo of the many that we took, the one that we liked the best, the microphone was obscuring his face. Which is fine if it was like a live photo from a concert, but this wasn't. We needed to see his face.
Yeah.
So in the old days, I would have had to either settled with a picture I didn't want to use, painstakingly remove the microphone and try to paint it back in, or try to take pieces of his face.
Very weird.
I've done
Especially
it where I've
on
taken
a face.
pieces. Right.
Yeah.
And I've done it with mixed success. We're taking pieces from other photos and you do a patchwork. There's like so many solutions. In 5 minutes, I loaded the picture into Photoshop. I circled the microphone. I selected the latest version of Firefly that came out in October. Firefly is the Adobe AI tool. And I said, remove the microphone and the stand from this photo. And it removed it. It gave me 3 options of portions of his face that it regenerated, and all of them looked perfect, right?
That's awesome.
I love this because I didn't generate the character from scratch, right? Like right now, AI is at a place where I could have generated a guy in a store playing a guitar. The guitar would have been close. It would have been guitar-like, but anybody who plays guitar would have been like, there's too many strings, that
his
the
finger is in the
resonator's
wrong
too
spot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. It'll be weird.
So the coolest thing about this is, well, I'm not saying I don't use generative AI in work all the time. The fact that I can remove things that fills in gaps without having to spend all day painting it back in. Then the other thing I can do is I can say, I wish I could have this same photo from a different angle. And now I can take it into Google's Gemini in the Nano Banana model and say, give me like a bird's eye view, or give me a low angle, like you're sitting in the front row. And it will keep the context accurate, which is great because now I'm not expecting it to generate something from scratch that might not. So making this full circle, the reason I brought up like standard definition and HD and technology is we as human beings are so adaptable that we are going to pick up on AI more and more. So like a new model comes out and you're like, I can't tell, it's not real. And then it's been out for a couple months and you're like, oh, it's obviously AI. In the old days, the fingers would all be wrong and that would be the tell. Now they've got the fingers right, but there will be new tells. Part of our human evolution has been our ability to recognize other humans.
Right.
And so I believe that we are going to evolve our perspective as AI evolves. And our ability to detect AI is going to evolve. Like we're just going to get better and better at a glance spotting it. So using it to manipulate real photos to me is really exciting because you're not going to spot my forgery, my AI forgery, if it started from a real place. And so it's really fun to use that augmented hybrid approach.
Well,
that way.
I was thinking about my dad talking about Kong when it first came out and how terrifying it was. And if you watch that film, it is absolutely the most hooky dukes looking, special effects. But at the time, that, to your point about contrast, that was state of the art. And so it was terrifying. But
they thought War of the Worlds as the radio program was real.
Right.
Like when they broadcast the War of the Worlds, and they even said that this was a radio drama.
Right.
But like people were not used to radio dramas, and they thought that the world was being invaded by aliens, for real.
That's so cool. I just quickly comment that I am astounded at the rate of adoption and how we have gotten used to generative AI and how it's just blended into our daily workflows. So, for example, you're using Firefly, it's embedded in the process, it's very natural to use it. Yeah, it's just remarkable how quickly we talk about it as if it was like, something that just came out a year ago is so old and outdated. Our rate of being comfortable with the next iteration and that contrast really feels like it's increasing.
Yes. It's interesting, a praise and a caution in terms of adoption and a warning. I absolutely love how in just a short period of time, Google has shifted to use Gemini in their search results in Google. Like when I Google things, I almost never look at the search results anymore. Yeah. I mean, this gives Google's AI an incredible amount of power because I'm giving it so much faith and trust that the AI generated answer at the top of the search result is accurate. I'm hoping that it is, and they have URLs to validate it and stuff. But it's so convenient to the point that I stopped using Siri on my phone. I'm an iPhone user, big time Apple user, love the ecosystem, but I stopped using Siri for anything I didn't have to. Siri still controls the lights in my house and opens my garage. But I added a shortcut on the home screen and an icon on the phone that takes me directly into the vocal prompt. So I push the button and it's like, I'm listening, and I ask it a question. 5 times a day, I'm asking it like historical facts, technical things for my car. Is there a technology that does X, Y, Z, whatever? And it almost, like, I feel bad because it's like it could lie to me and I would believe it because I just love the convenience, right? However, you have to be, this is the warning. Literally yesterday, I was working on my car. I was replacing, I still like to do some things with my hands, and I was replacing the sway bar linkages, which connects the suspension to the sway bar. And it took me all day to get it done. It had a rusted bolt. I got that figured out. Thankfully, YouTube taught me everything that I needed to know, except for the torque spec for the new sway bar linkage. I needed to torque it to the right spec. My routine has been working on my cars, pull up the Google thing, it's listening, I ask it the question, I say, hey, what is the torque spec on a 2008 MDX sway bar linkage? It says 16 foot-pounds. And I thought, I don't think that's right? That seems really low, right? And I ended up doing more research and found that it's 58 foot-pounds. Yeah. Substantially more, right? If I had taken it at first glance at 16 foot-pounds, I could have been driving a very dangerous vehicle down the road, right? If I had just assumed that first answer was right? But because it's so convenient, I won't stop doing it.
I know.
I need the experience to know if. But it's like it's just like with people. You need to sniff test what people are telling you, right? So if I had said, "Hey James, what's the torque spec?" and you had said 16 foot-pounds, I still would have been like, I'm not sure that's right,
buddy. And also, you've been known to be wrong before. Well, it's funny that you say that you rely on Google because I find Google answers to be particularly bad.
Really?
Yeah. So I use ChatGPT, and Gemini 3 did just come out, and I've played with it a little bit. And apparently they're going to be blending that into their search engine eventually. And so I think it's already in AI mode. And I
Yeah.
think it's mainly to get some traction out there. But I think that model is going to be pretty impressive, and we're going to probably see
Yeah.
a lot fewer of those types of errors. But it is interesting that you sort of mentioned, asking a friend or your brother-in-law like a question. You're based on their character, you're going to have some skepticism that matches
Right.
up with who they are. And I think
Right.
it's sort of true that I have witnessed in myself that some of these tools have a history, and I don't trust some in certain contexts, and I trust others. I find myself using a lot of different
Totally.
chatbots, and I use
Totally.
a lot of different tools. I use Claude Code, I use ChatGPT, I use Google, Gemini, and it's just sort of wild to me how successful they've been at sort of all of them grabbing our attention and being useful in some way. And it sounded like you were using multiple tools as well.
Totally. I love ChatGPT, and I use it substantially, but I use ChatGPT more deliberately. Whereas Google is like,
just
how
ad
old
hoc.
is this actor?
Yeah.
Like
Fair.
I
Same.
want to settle a bet or whatever.
Right.
And
Hey, Google, back me up.
Right. Well, but ChatGPT is, while it's convenient, and I have the app on my phone.
I woke her up.
Who'd you wake up?
Google.
Oh, gotcha. They're listening. I
listening.
heard a quote. I'm going to paraphrase the quote. Somebody said, actually, no, scratch that. I don't want to. That's a tangent. I don't want to get
Okay.
ChatGPT, I use it on my phone all the time, but more deliberately. And one thing, I know they have a setting where you could say, don't keep the chat log. Because I find it annoying how many times I use ChatGPT for throwaway requests that I don't want it to keep.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go in there and delete them all.
Right.
Whereas when I just use Google, I'm sure they're keeping a log, but it doesn't clutter up anything I'm using. It just answers the question and then it goes away. And what I like about that is something that I think all technology should do. Apple was really good at this in the early days, and to some extent they still are. But technology should get out of the way.
Yeah.
And Google is really good about offering you things in as few clicks as possible. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think ChatGPT is so new, I think they get in their own way sometimes.
New, and also in some ways, first tech platform to roll out this generative capability. And so they're sort of stuck with a legacy UI in a lot of ways. It's sort of doesn't really match the, what we're using it for.
Yeah. And it's going to be interesting to see how the UI changes, because it's interesting that chat was the thing that kind of spurred the entire AI revolution.
I would never have guessed that.
So tell me if you're experiencing this. I have this weird phenomenon happening right now in ChatGPT where I pay for whatever the $20 a month version of ChatGPT is. And my entire experience in ChatGPT, even though I group things into projects, right? So like I have client projects where I'm using it to summarize documents or build outlines, but it's all within a project. And then I've got some creative things where I've written a script or I've written a story and I'm like, summarize what I've written. Because I'm really, especially in personal creative projects, I don't want ChatGPT to do the writing for me, but I want it to help me organize things that I'm doing.
Yes.
So I wrote something and I said, what do you think about this in the I'm trying to get this made. What am I not thinking of? Like what are the pitfalls? What are the plot holes? And the first responses it gives me is just kind of congratulations. You're so good. Yeah. You're so talented. Just patting me on the back. And I'm like, and I had to kind of yell at it multiple times. I'm like, stop sugarcoating everything. My teenage kids, they call it glazing. They're like, they're glazing you. I was like, stop glazing me, ChatGPT. Yeah. Stop being so supportive. I need, and you can tell, like, I'm somebody who really values like cold, honest feedback. I don't need you to be nice to me. I need it to be good.
Right.
And so I've been coaching that one project. Give me honest feedback. Tell me exactly da-da-da-da-da. Well, apparently it has logged that direction from me across the board. And so now I put in a thing where I was like I was using ChatGPT instead of Google this time. I was trying to diagnose, I have a 2005 BMW X3 that the key fob stopped working. And I was trying to figure out why, because I know it's not the battery. And I said, here are the circumstances, here's the model, what could be the problem? And the first thing it gives me is like, here's the very real, hardcore, unsugar-coated truth. We're gonna give it to you straight, and we're not gonna sugarcoat anything. I'm like, what? Like, what
Here
are
it
you
is.
doing? Like, yeah.
The sway bar
everything
is 16 pounds, and there's no sugarcoating about it. You got to.
There's no there's no nice way to put this. Like, we're gonna let you down hard instead of easy. And I don't know how to turn that off.
Well, I think one of the problems, I don't know if this is a recent experience, but OpenAI just released 5.1 as their default model in ChatGPT. And 5.1 was specifically retooled to go back to almost 4.0, which was way more sycophantic and had all that back padding. So there were some areas where they kind of stepped back a little bit in terms of their capability, because they wanted, people sort of complained that it wasn't friendly enough. And so now it's like interjecting all this like informal language and these like pats on the back. And it is sort of weird. I do find it sort of strange. Maybe because I'm an analytical person, I don't really appreciate all of that flowery language. I just wanted to get to the details, kind of like you were saying. I want the tools to get out of the way and to give me the information. Now, if I was like, hey, look, I'm looking for some coaching, maybe that would be appropriate language. But I think it should, like you said, keep it in the context of the project, keep it based on the material that we're going after. And, I think overly sycophantic language is not helpful in any way. Yeah,
I agree. And look, everybody's different. Some people may have just much, may need to be approached more delicately. I'm just not that way. I'm not that way. I just want the facts, especially from a machine. Like if you're a person, you're like, like, I'm gonna let you down easy. You're gonna have to buy a $3,000 key from BMW or whatever it is. Like,
it's gonna be interesting to see how these companies try to turn their investments into a profit, and are they going to go down the road that Facebook went down, which is sort of engagement at any cost, or are they going to stick to, let's make this as useful as possible and have utility be the main value driver? So it'll be interesting to see where they go. It does seem like the different companies are taking different roads, which is why we're using them for different things. Which maybe is a good thing.
One thing I'm concerned about that I want to keep an eye on is, and it's not the thing that a lot of other creatives are talking about. Every creative I know is like, they're cutting into my business or whatever. And I don't think that way. I think that just learn the tool, learn how to make it useful to you, is my perspective.
Yeah.
Where I'm concerned is I want to make sure people don't forget that these are tools and that you're supposed to use them as a means to an end.
Yeah.
And that the end is up to you. And AI is great for helping you test ideas and see if something exists, and helping you realize something and build prototypes and all of that. But make sure that you're not just using it to use it, because it seems like all technology has a version of itself that just becomes a drug in it to itself. So like, slot machines do nothing except for feed a gambling addiction where you're just like, I might win. Social media addiction. We were talking about older people taking advantage of technology. I wish my dad would get off of Facebook. It's like 5-6 times a day posting memes. And it's just like, Dad, please just get off, So there's adoption and then there's addiction. And the thing is, Facebook is designed where it was designed to make connection and build community, and it was incredible for where it was useful and good, has also edited its algorithm to make sure you don't ever want to get off. Yeah. So Facebook and Instagram and YouTube is doing this too. It's like they're designed to keep you scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and the utility of that is lost because all you're doing is paying them with your attention as they charge companies for advertising. Yeah. And the warning is, I don't want these AI tools, especially the big ones like ChatGPT or Gemini, to kind of lose the script on what their purpose is. Yeah. I want them to serve mankind, to make things, to do good work, to make things. And I don't want people to be like, I'm in love with my chat bot because it gets me and I never get off.
Yeah. I mean, well, I think what's going to happen, unsurprisingly, is that we're going to have, like we do today, we're going to have companies that are going to focus on building the addiction and profiting off the addiction markets. And then we're going to have companies that focus on utility. It's interesting to see how these companies are evolving today and where they're choosing to focus. OpenAI does seem like they're slipping a little bit more towards making engagement a more important driver than it has been in the past. So we'll just have to see how that evolves.
Yeah. I am excited. I love the idea of prototyping things quickly. When I'm working on scripts and movies that I want to work on, it's not lost on me that it would be better to hire a storyboard artist to draft up concepts for me. And I do still want to do that because I love the collaborative process with other human beings. Mm-hmm. But sometimes I just need to vet if one of my ideas is good and I need to get it out of my head. Yeah. And so when I'm using, ChatGPT, for example, to prototype an aesthetic for a character or a scene or a location, and I just describe what I want, and then I describe a modification, and it does it, and then I can look at that and do the old-fashioned this, not that. It's incredibly empowering because now I'm like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I don't want that. And if I had paid somebody to storyboard that for me, it might have been a waste of money and a waste of time. Yeah. And so I think it's a really awesome for creatives that are trying to prototype ideas to kind of get like a beta version out and then start incorporating other people as you advance to later iterations, So it's great for that.
We're a little bit over time, but I wanted to ask you, one area that you've always expressed some interest in, and I was curious if you've been experimenting with this at all, but I know you've been excited about creating music, and I'm curious if you've spent any time with some of the generative music products, and is it something that you found interesting?
The short answer is yes. I spent some time with I think it's called Sora. Not Sora. What is it called? Suno. Yeah. Suno. Yes. I went down the Suno rabbit hole, and you would have not been able to have gotten a hold of me that 2-week period in my life where I'm like, I'm a musician, like I can make anything, and it's what's wild about it is the music that I experimented making with in that platform is the act of doing it is as entertaining as any entertainment I have ever experienced, right? Like it scratches, and it's so weird because I'm creating things with lyrics and ideas and genres that are unique to me that only satisfy my personal taste. And I was as satisfied making that music as I am watching my favorite movie or going to my favorite concert, to the point that it freaked me out. Because it was like the dopamine access that this app had on me was like there was a zero barrier. It's like, oh, you like this, and it's like, I need more of this, and it was a lot of fun. I was immediately making like comedy songs and stuff. Like
Yeah.
I made, I don't know. I should show you the ones I made. I made songs about your brother Andrew,
Yeah, I
about
need to see
his.
these.
Okay, so I made these songs about him wanting to start a coffee empire because he's a very talented coffee roaster. And I'm keep pressing him like, you need to go full steam into this. And so I wrote him something that was like this ballad singing about his coffee dreams, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I sent it to him and he was like, how did you make this? And then I sent him Suno, and then he got addicted to it and stopped working on coffee stuff. And so then I made a follow-up song about how he gave up on coffee to make AI music. And to the point that it inspired this whole idea, like I could literally write an entire musical about, it'd be like a modern musical theater production about a guy who loved coffee and then got addicted to creating AI music. And it was so fun. It was so satisfying.
So cool.
However, I do not know how to play any of the instruments or sing anything in there. And so at the end of the day, it was like playing a video game. Like in retrospect, it was like playing the greatest video game. But it didn't. Yeah. It wouldn't put me on stage and let me, serenade someone in real life.
Oh, you know what I think maybe does work, and it goes back to kind of your filmmaking and art directing, is like if you did have a concept that you wanted to make come to life into music, prototyping it in a tool like that does seem very appealing.
Yeah. I mean, we have used it. I have used it for work. I created a song. I had there was a game show that we created for music and arts called, and I can send you a link to it. It was a social media game show called Be Sharp. And it was an interview, it was a quiz show where we asked people in the store musical questions. If they got it right, they won prizes. And we wrote these lyrics called you can win big prizes at music and arts, but you gotta be sharp. And we wrote these lyrics and we loaded it into Suno and had it generate an AI. It was like a hip hop style, like a 90s hip hop style song, right?
Yeah.
And so it sounds amazing. It's incredible. Like you could win big prizes at music and arts, but you gotta be sharp. And it's like I work with a bunch of musicians there at Music and Arts, and they're listening to it. And before I showed it to them, like this is the devil's playground. Like you cannot be using AI generated stuff. And then they listen to it and they're like, yeah, it's really good. Like it's really fun. And we're not claiming that we've created, music. We're not selling it as commercial music.
Sure.
It was just a jingle for a quiz show.
Right.
Where we are giving away prizes to real musicians who are really learning music in real life, and then we're giving them physical items. And so that's a great example of using a fun music tool really, really quickly. From it took us like less than a day to get like the version we wanted and edited it up and everything.
Yeah.
And so it was just this great enhancement. And so
that's fun.
And that was a commercial application.
Well, I have a friend who composes jingles for companies in that exact thing. And I just sort of asked him, I was like, is this something that you find scary? Are you using it? He was like, I'm not using it. I don't find it scary because usually I have customers coming to me and they're like, I want it to sound, just like this song, but be obviously different. And he's like, I've got a really narrow set of customers. And I'm like, oh, that sounds exactly like what Suno's for. but I do think, this is the kind of stuff that's like, that's the perfect use for that,
Yeah. Where it's also perfect is stock music, right? So for 20 years I've used stock music.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's funny about stock music is I hear tracks that I have used on TV all the time.
I do too.
And it's like they used my track, but so AI has
the
ability to give you music. Yeah, I didn't do the buyout. And I've also hired composers, and I've hired composers for projects where I needed a specific instrument at a specific time with a specific emotion, and I couldn't do it with stock, and I couldn't do it with AI because I needed I needed a level of control and care that a real composer could provide for me.
Right.
And it isn't, I'm not saying that Suno couldn't get to that place eventually.
Certainly not there.
Yeah, it's not that level of control. I've tried to download stems from Suno and yeah, it's not, you don't have enough control.
I imagine it would be kind of like importing, like trying to take an image and import it into a vector editor and like just have it turn it all to paths and try to edit the image. It's like so not organized, and it's so it's really probably very hard to edit it in a meaningful way. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But I thought that was a really fun technology that I just assumed that you were going to be playing with, and it sounds like
I've had to resist. I've had to resist, and like I'm me. I've had lots of business ideas over the years, and I'm in a new stage in my life where I've had to narrow down, right? Mm-hmm. Because I get so easily enchanted. Fortunately, being
we're
diversified
the same in this regard.
Right. So I've being diversified and having multiple interests and talents has kept me a roof over my head and my family fed. Mm-hmm. But now we're at a point where I have to stop chasing shiny objects. Yeah. And I can use Suno for work within limits and making sure that it's an ethical application. Sure. And I'm not spending too much time on it. But personally, like, it was too much fun for me to get into. I don't play video games really anymore because I get like hooked and I'm like, it's all I want to do. Yeah. And so I have, I'm 41 years old. I feel like I have a lot I want to do, and I need to be focused on what I'm doing. Yeah. So I'm focused on keeping the family fed, and I'm focused on filmmaking. Well, and if it's not supporting filmmaking, I'm trying not to get distracted.
Well, you're doing a fantastic job, and I cannot wait to see your next creative projects. Ian Pullens, it's been a pleasure to talk with you. Thanks for joining the Smol podcast.
Anytime.